Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's CUGC Connect with IGEL and Lakeside. I am Stephanie Boozer, and I'm happy to welcome you to the presentation today. Before we get started, just a quick note that CUGC is actually, we have more than 17,000 members globally right now. We have closer to 20, so we've been growing, which is exciting. We have user groups all over the world, so you should definitely, if you haven't already, you should go over to mycugc.org and find your local group, get plugged in, and sign up for a meeting and get going. There's also tons of information out there for you on our site. We've got forums and lots of blog posts, and definitely lots more blog posts coming up now that Synergy is almost here. So definitely come check it out. On our call with us today, we have from IGEL, we have Simon Clephan and Jeff Feige. And from Lakeside, we have Patricia Diaz and Ben Murphy. And they are going to take us through some demos and discussion. And always want you to know you can type your questions as we move along into the question panel. I'm sure that you will have many, and they'll be happy to answer them. All right, and speaking of questions, on our call today, we have Sam Jacobs. Sam is a CTP. He is the Director of Technology Development at IPM, and he has done many webinars with us at CUGC, so we're glad to have him back, and he will be keeping an eye on your questions for us. So again, please type those in, and he'll try to get to some of them throughout the presentation, and those that we can't, we'll either take them at the end or take them offline. So with that, I will hand things over to Sam to say hello, and I think he has a couple of polls for you guys to get us started.
All right, great. Thank you, Stephanie. Well, welcome everybody to the webinar. We have 2 polls. We're actually trying to get a feel for who is currently using IGEL and Lakeside software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a quick poll. If you can just respond, and we will see what percentage of the people are currently using IGEL. We'll leave it up for a few seconds. I see 51%, 54% voted. Give it another 10 seconds or so. Okay, with about 70% of the people voting, we have 50% saying yes and 50% saying no, evenly divided. Very nice. Interesting. Okay, and I don't know if I can show that to everybody. Okay, we'll move on to the second question. Second question is, are you currently a Lakeside customer? And this should help the presenters target their presentation.
I'm only upset that I can't vote. This is Simon. I've been locked out.
Ah, it says, I'm organizing the panelists, don't vote. Yeah.
Yeah. Clever stuff.
Yep. Give it another 10 seconds and then. Okay, with 80% reporting in, we have about 20% of responders said yes, they are currently a Lakeside customer using Systrack. Thank you, everybody. Okay, and with that, I will hand it over to Ben. Will you be presenting?
No.
I'm sorry, Patricia.
Simon.
Oh, Simon, sorry. Hand it over to Simon.
And Patricia, can you pull up the first slide? There we go.
Good?
Yep.
All right.
So this is Simon Clephan from IGEL. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Sam, for that introduction. I'm looking forward to this session, and hopefully we'll have some interesting questions. and we'll see if we can do to move those people who are using Lakeside and who aren't using Lakeside and aren't using IGEL forward to show you some of the reasons why we think this is going to be a useful tool for you. Today we're talking about the Citrix virtual channel for the IGEL OS. It's a new feature, a new capability that we've developed. Lakeside will tell you a lot more about this in a second, but it is a patented technology, and we're very excited to be partnering with Lakeside to offer this capability. We're going to start off with a quick overview of IGEL, and then I'm going to pass over back to Patricia, who's going to talk a little bit about Lakeside, and then we will go in depth into a demo of this technology. And I think that's going to be the most interesting part. So we'll try to do as few slides as we possibly can and give you an overview of what we can actually do, and then we'll open up for questions. As mentioned at the beginning, we'd be more than happy to take questions during the presentation, so feel free to put anything into the chat window. Next slide, please, Patricia. So I've got 3 slides. I just want to introduce IGEL, and most of you are fairly familiar with us, but essentially we're the guys who sit at the end. We're the guys who sit at the endpoint and are the delivery mechanism for putting it onto a desktop and delivering it to an end user. We focus really on endpoints and on endpoint management. The key being our endpoint management and our ability to manage tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of devices with a simple click and point and click interface, so that the IT people can manage all this large scale VDI implementations and make sure the right things are happening at the endpoint. With that, we partner closely with Lakeside, because what Lakeside can do is track performance from beginning to end, or from data center to the endpoint. So we work closely with them so we can show you not only that your customers, your end users, the end user IT users are getting the desktops that they want, but they're also getting the performance they need to be productive. It's all about delivering productive desktops. Citrix is absolutely our #1 partner, so we're delighted to be here at the Citrix user group explaining how this works in conjunction with Citrix. For us, they are the driving force behind a large number of our sales. I'd say more than 80% of our sales are on Citrix, and we love to partner with these guys and work to use their technology and make it better from the endpoint delivery perspective. Next slide, please. So summing up what IGEL actually does, as I mentioned, the core of our abilities are in this endpoint, this central piece, this IGEL UMS, the Universal Management Suite, with the ability to give granular configuration of endpoints. And I talk about drag and drop, and we have 7,000 different controls we can push out. We're smart about how we deliver them in real time. It can be really effective when you have something like Spectre or Meltdown, and you need to push out a firmware update to fix a potential problem of malware. We can make sure that actually happens. Highly secure, because we build on the Linux operating system. This is based upon an Ubuntu distribution. It's a secure and long-term release, so it's very useful for enterprise deployments, and we stand behind it with either a 3 or a 5-year warranty, depending on which of our products you buy, and highly scalable. We deliver this in multiple different ways. We have a converter software, so we can take any x86 64-bit device, convert it to the IGEL OS, and then manage it. We can plug in a USB key, which gives you the full IGEL OS purely by booting to USB key. And then we also have our own thin clients, and we also have all-in-one clients with Samsung, and hopefully soon with another provider of all-in-one clients. And beyond that, we have software that enables you to access and control devices that not just only are on your network, but are anywhere out that have access to the internet through the IGEL Cloud Gateway. We also interface into other tools and enable you to use things like MDM management tools through our management interface. We also work in conjunction with Windows devices, so we actually ship, not only do we ship the IGEL OS, but we also ship Windows on the endpoints. and we have asset inventory tracking, so you can see which headsets plugged in, which devices have failed. If you're in a hospital, make sure that the Imprimatur tap and go system is available, and things like that work. Next slide, please. And just summing it all up, integrating this into Citrix's world is really the core of what we're doing. And there's a couple of builds on this, so maybe you could click on that a couple of times, or just one more time. Patricia, I can see that's it, perfect. So where IGEL fits in with user management, with the secure IT, and fitting into the Citrix secure digital perimeter, enabling you to do all the things and take advantage of all the technologies that Citrix is bringing to the party. Before I hand over, though, to Lakeside, I just want to talk about one, I got about half an hour before I got on this call, I was on a call with a call center agency. This is a call center agency, and this gives you an idea of how this technology can be used and why we're talking about this. This is a call center agency that basically delivers soft phones and delivers a solution, and they hire out people who work from home. They ship them one of these UD Pocket things. You plug it into their PC, you boot the PC to USB, and up comes your screen, your secure browser, and it's a very controlled environment with a soft phone. And then one of the #1 things that they're asked by the agencies that they sell to, and they sell to Vegas and to various other people who organize call centers, all those irritating sales calls, I'm sorry, that we get from time to time. But one of the things that they get is, how can you guarantee in a VDI world the performance of those end users? And this is why we're working closely with Lakeside, so that we can measure and track and manage performance from endpoint, keyboard, screen, soft phone, all the way through to the data center. And that's why I'm absolutely loving what we're doing with Lakeside at the moment, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this presentation. Over to you, Patricia. Sorry, Sam?
Simon, yeah, we have one question. What about HDX real-time media engine support for Skype for Business, audio and video?
Absolutely, that's a core built into our technologies. Now, IGEL offers multiple different versions. As I said, we convert devices. We have low-end thin clients all the way to high-end thin clients. We've just been qualified on with a couple of our devices, our UD3 and our UD7, with the full HDX, HDX Pro, and HDX. There's another, I've forgotten what the third HDX is. Jeff, can you remember what it is? No. But yes, we're fully qualified with the high performance video for HDX with Citrix, and but not on every device. I have to warn you that we tend to use some of our higher end devices because we will use the hardware acceleration capabilities. Hence, we need the slightly more powerful processor chips inside the hardware.
Okay, thank you.
Over to Lakeside.
Great. Well, hello. Today I'm very excited to share with you our point of view on tracking performance, and most importantly, tracking end user experience in virtualized environments, because that's really at the core of the fresh out of the oven integration we have here with IGEL. First, my name is Patricia Diaz. I am part of our product marketing team here at Lakeside. With me as well is Ben Murphy, who's our Director of Applied Engineering, and he'll be demoing the solution for us here today. Before I dive in, though, I'll start with a quick introduction, since about 80% of you who took the poll didn't list yourselves as customers. For the other 20%, this might be stuff you already know, but I'm happy to have you on the line as well and present this new integration. So, a little bit about Lakeside. We're an IT company that has been around for 20 years now, and we really focus on bringing IT true endpoint visibility into their EUC environments. Visibility into endpoint performance, resource usage, overall availability of resources, you name it. And that visibility our customers then use to understand and really improve their environments for that end user experience. Our flagship solution is called Citrix. and it is a workspace analytics solution that works directly from the endpoint and gathers and analyzes thousands of data points on performance, system data, usage, and reports that back to IT. Systrack it's really built on the fact that many organizations right now have slim to no visibility into how are IT products and IT services really performing at the endpoint and how are they being used, right? Now, to the point of basically our conversation here today, if you add in a virtualized environment, that visibility becomes even more limited, right? So what we found is that specifically when it comes to those virtualized environments, IT teams have really no way to correlate issues that are end user facing, say device issues, network issues, and correlate that to the usage of the guest resources, right? In order to really find what the root cause of issues are in order to fix them. Why is X resource really crashing, right? Why is the CPU really spiking? Is the issue at the thin client level? Is it at the VM level, right? So that's what I wanted to share with you today. That's why we've partnered with IGEL in part to bring that endpoint visibility to IGEL OS powered endpoints to IT teams. So now baked into the latest IGEL OS will be this virtual channel that is responsible for transferring virtual machine data on performance, usage, and device data from IGEL environments to IT teams. They can access that data via the Systrack solution and use that to track performance and, most importantly, to track end user experience. How is that impacting the end user experience in the overall IGEL environment? Ben Murphy will be demoing the solution here shortly to give you a better idea for what that looks like. But I can give you a quick overview of kind of how it works. Okay. The way it works is via a proprietary virtual channel that, as I mentioned, will be baked into that IGEL OS. And I guess more simply put, a module sits on the thin client. It's capturing device data, and it then forwards that data using our virtual channel to the VM, which is also instrumented with an agent collecting things like usage and performance data. And from there, the endpoint and VM data is aggregated into our database from where then the IT admins can access that data. So because of this architecture and the virtual channel being already built into the OS, you as the IT admin can really have end-to-end visibility into that environment. So it's really, really exciting new stuff that's not already out there. So really, really excited to bring this forward.
Patricia, does this channel replace the Systrack client in the guest VM?
Does the channel replace? No, it does not. The channel basically transfers some device data to the agent that's on the VM or RDSH machine.
Got it.
And from there, it's aggregated to the database. So yeah, no replacement there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So what, right? What's in it for you? What we've heard from our customers is that this integration, of course, first and foremost, brings visibility into the state of the environment so that you can fine tune it, so you can improve it. But perhaps one of the most exciting parts of this integration is the fact that it offers visibility into what that end user experience is for Linux OS. And another piece that's really exciting for our customers is how lightweight the solution is, that even though it's gathering thousands of data points directly from the VM and some from the thin client as well, it does not impact the end user experience. That usually really gets our customers very, very excited. Now, as I mentioned, we'll be demoing the solution here shortly, but just to give you a little bit of a teaser, there are many cases you can get out of that data that's being gathered, namely understanding how applications are performing and how their performance is really impacting other resources in the environment, right? Like in the middle screenshot, you can see how this Wireshark application is negatively impacting memory. while the first application on the list is eating up CPU, right? So really knowing, okay, the application may be performing okay, but how is it impacting other resources within the workspace that are then impacting the end user experience? Similarly, all this endpoint data can also help you in understanding what is happening at the endpoint during X interval of time, or in real time specifically. It's data that our customers use for all sorts of use cases. These are just two of the ones that call out to me, especially in this integration. But mostly the use cases our customers use the solution for are on the screen right now, really monitoring what is happening at the endpoint so that then you can practice things like proactive support, maybe solving issues before end users know of them, to optimizing IT investments like licensing or right-sizing software deployments, to correlating events happening at the endpoint, to really do root cause analysis, which is a really big component of this integration specifically, right? So that's kind of the slides that I had today before the demo. Do we have any other questions on the line before I hand it over to Ben? Sam? Nope. All right, then I will hand it over to Ben.
Oh, I'm sorry. No more questions.
No more questions. Okay. Let me see.
All right, so I'm sorry, Ben, do you need the screen now?
I will. Yep.
All right, here it comes.
Okay, you got it. Perfect.
All right. So ideally, everyone can see the screen now. Give it a second or two to refresh. So again, to recap, I'm Ben Murphy. I'm the director of our Applied Engineering Group here at Lakeside Software, and I'm going to step you through a little bit of background on what it is that we do and some of the concepts behind our, for example, user experience metrics. And then I'll go into the explicit integration points. So as a little bit of background, those of you who are familiar with the solution set that we offer are probably generally aware of the fact that, as we've mentioned, there is a component that's continuously collecting data out on either an endpoint, in the case of kind of a fully featured client like a Windows workstation, et cetera, or in the case that we're specifically focused on here, in the case of a VM or an RDSH machine, we have a little agent that's sitting in there continuously running and collecting data. Well, the utility of that is that we get a lot of visibility into what's happening on that particular machine that's hosting a session. So resource consumption information, application interaction, user behaviors, a whole host of stuff that helps us come up with a user experience score. So the focal point for us in large part, as Patricia mentioned, is coming up with some mechanism that allows us to articulate how well is the user enjoying their user experience. Well, holistically, to date, this has been kind of an analysis of what we have directly collected data on, so where an agent is actually running. So the cool thing about what we've worked on with IGEL in this case is the ability now to augment that with some additional information that you would not necessarily have had visibility into in the past. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of what the past state was, and then we'll segue a little bit more into the complete picture. But the idea is that this user experience score that we've calculated is a very, very good indicative value of how well things work in the environment. So I'm not going to dwell too much on the particulars of that in the interest of time, but it's essentially a top-level KPI. It goes from 0 to 100, represents how well things in the environment are working. And that's split off by various KPIs that underlie that KPI. So things like resource consumption problems, or supporting infrastructure issues, or update issues, latency issues, things that might complicate or cause problems with that user experience. But again, the idea here is that this is based on things that we've directly observed and based on connectivity that we have seen from whatever device we're observing into some remote component. So here, for example, we've got an average enterprise where we've got not a terrible user experience. We can see what the evolution of that is over time. We can see the latency as a component. I can drill in, organize this by groups, et cetera, et cetera. But the real interesting part now is that, especially in the case where I've got a VM or a remote session, I may not necessarily, with just this information, know what the true source of the user experience problem is if something happens on the machine that a user is using to access the session itself. So the key for us is now with this additional client visibility, we've got an added dimension. So if you take a given, let's say, Zen app deployment, where you've got actually a fairly robust stack of things that kind of combine together in order to deliver a user their session, you've got some device, so in this case, an IGEL remote device, that connects in through some networking components, that then gets brokered in through some other components. There's kind of a complete stack that makes up what the picture of a infrastructure looks like. So in this particular case, the visibility that we're adding is our client side data. So what we can do is now start to actually map out if someone experiences a problem, is it because that client is suffering an issue? Is it because some intervening networking component between is suffering an issue? Or is it something that's a little bit further down within the data center? So let's take a look at an example of that. So in this case, let's say I want to take a look at a Zen app server and use this as kind of the nucleating point for our data. So like Patricia mentioned earlier, the idea is that really fundamentally nothing has changed with the infrastructure, the supporting way that we collect the data. Instead, we have augmented the information that we're getting on a per session basis by now feeding data in from the IGEL device that tells us what's happening on the machine when someone's actually interacting with it. So to give you an example, let's take a look right at this particular moment in time. So here, we can actually see that we have a variety of users that are currently using IGEL devices on this Zen app server. So explicitly, we've got 4 users in this particular case that are interacting with a session that's hosted on this machine. And then here are the surrounding metrics that inform us a little bit on what kind of client performance characteristics they have. So the interesting dimension to this is something that was not necessarily that easy to figure out before, which is if someone has a performance problem and I notice, for example, that it's not a performance problem with something in the guest system. So if it's not a session latency problem, if it's not something relating to a backend dependency within that session, if it's not a resource related problem, how do I narrow the scope and figure out what is it that's causing that user experience issue? This now gives us that added visibility in order to figure out what's the source. So if, for example, I wanted to try and figure out some latency related stats. So here I can see that's a consistent user experience problem in this particular case. I can drill in, I can see within the guest system what's happening. But what if I wanted to figure out if I have session latency, let's say, what the actual source of that is, or what the interaction between the client device, so the IGEL device in this case, and the actual system is? Well, with this model, I now have the ability to look up a series of remote stats. So let's say that I want to look at my latency for the primary network device for the thin client that people are using to access the session. I've got the ability to have a full timeline for that. I can click in, and it gives me my full stats for what was happening at that time with the client device that someone was using to access the instance. The key is that this gives me additional visibility to help rule out the client device, in this case, for a user experience problem, if that's not something that's actually driving, for example, high CPU, which might cause protocol rendering problems or high latency issues. I've also got the ability to time correlate this with other key metrics. So let's say that I want to look at the CPU utilization on a specific person's client and overlay that with some of the user experience metrics that we collect natively. Very easy for us to do. Or if I want to time correlate that with when someone had a performance complaint, it's very straightforward for me to go back to that point in time, look at all the surrounding context for what was that user doing, and have a very good idea of where might a performance problem have arisen. So the key, and again, this is something that's very important, is that this does not induce any additional overhead. There is not any active agent component that's deployed out on the actual IGEL device itself. It's actually got kind of a mini module that's sitting out and forwarding this information via a virtual channel. And here's the real key. it does not require any additional networking or kind of complex setup to pump this data into the actual instance itself. So this actually is natively fed in and read by our agent so that you've got that visibility without any additional configuration at all. This is all out of the box functionality. So the other side of this is if I want to look up a particular user. So here, for example, I have the ability to look up this user. I can filter it down to a particular device with which he's interacting, get a full set of statistics about its performance, and again, trend this over time. The key is, though, with the ability to time correlate that with everything that this user was doing on the actual session itself. So I get a very complete picture. So that if this user calls in and says, my system is slow, just because a logo that they might see directly in front of them is an IGEL device does not necessarily mean they immediately then associate that with poor performance. You've got something that justifies where the actual root cause of the problem comes from. So let me pause there because again, I think fundamentally that's a fairly straightforward overview of kind of the direct integration and the data correlation that we've got going on. And ask if there are any questions or kind of any need for additional clarity.
Yep. What port and protocol does the virtual channel use?
Great, good. So this actually makes use of any active protocol that you might happen to use. So obviously, for the context of this conversation, that's going to be HEX ICA. So that's natively just adding that in. So it actually would go over the standard ports for that. Effectively, what we're doing is adding a channel within that kind of parent channel setup. So if you want to think about it, we're just kind of adding an additional pipe, if you will, within that kind of parent pipe. But it does support RDP, and although it's probably not the best idea to say it, TCP and BLAST as well are supported as protocols, if that happens to be a passing interest.
Now, so far we've been talking about supporting IGEL devices. Does Lakeside plan integrations with other thin client devices, like Wise or any other vendors?
So at this time, this is an IGEL specific integration.
Okay. Okay. How is it licensed for users running SysTrack on the VM?
Sure. So in this case, the license is tied to the VM that is being monitored. So we have kind of a per workstation license type. There's also a per user license type. I guess into a little bit of a vagary. But the actual device itself, so the IGEL device, that license is bundled in to that cost. So there's no additional licensing required for the data collection from the actual IGEL device itself.
Cool.
Yeah, so from the IGEL perspective, there's no incremental licensing required for this. It's just part of the service that we offer, and if you have Lakeside, then you're going to get the benefit of this. We'll actually be shipping it in the next release of our operating system, 10.05, which is scheduled for release in August. But I have good news. We will have a private build. We have a special release specifically for Synergy, and we will be handing out some special UD pockets at Synergy with this technology enabled in it. So if you're listening and you're planning on coming to Synergy, please stop by our booth and ask for the special Lakeside build, and we'll be delighted to set you up and so you can get started with this technology in the well, immediately, and then it will be fully available in the August timeframe.
Cool. That's it for questions for now.
All right, fantastic. So that wraps up the general overview. Like Simon mentioned, this will be available as something that you can take a look at Synergy, at least to get a little bit more of an in-depth review. But again, just to kind of recap, what we're talking about is the ability for us to time correlate detailed performance statistics from the actual IGEL device itself with a user and a specific session that they have connected to, either in a VM context or in a session host context, to be able to more fully understand what their user experience is and what the drivers are that might underlie some user experience problems that they might get into in their environment.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, Ben. So I guess, Simon, I wanted to leave a little bit of time at the end for you to speak to the IT baller piece as well, and any other wrapping up comments.
Okay, well, sorry?
I was going to say, Sam, I guess we have one more poll for our listeners before we wrap it up. Okay.
We'd certainly like to hear that.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right. And so the poll is, how important of a problem is this end-to-end analysis of VDI performance to you? Well, it must be pretty important. We have like 85%, either very important or mission critical. Give it another 5 seconds or so. Yep. Okay. So 85% said it's either very important or mission critical.
Magic. And in fairness, this is exactly what we're finding as IGEL spends more and more time working with clients who are implementing unified communications, in particular Skype for Business and GoToMeeting and WebEx, and wanting to put these into a VDI environment. You know, your ability to deliver these in a VDI is really, you know, completely tied to your ability to be able to track it and figure out where the problems are. In the past, the solution was just throw more resources at it, which can be very, very expensive. Now, with these tools that we're building with Lakeside, we can really dig down and figure out where the problems are and then throw resources at where the problem really is, not making these guesses and wasting a bunch of time and money trying to figure out how we might be able to make it faster. So good. I think we're on the right track. Nice job. Thanks, Ben. The last point that I wanted to make was thank you for joining us. And as a thank you, essentially, IGEL is running a contest at the moment. It's called the IT Baller Contest. Next slide, please, Patricia. And we're giving away $120,000. I know you may have heard last year we gave away a Tesla P100D, and then early this year we actually gave away a Tesla Model 3. Well, now this year we're giving away $120,000 in 6 chunks of $20,000. The first of those will be given away at Synergy. So make sure if you are attending, you come to the IGEL booth at Synergy. If you go to that website, itballer.com, it'll give you all the details. You can register with the code VIR02, and we will be delighted to see you at the first drawing on the IGEL booth on the Thursday afternoon. I think it's going to take place between 3 and 3:30 at the close of the at the Expo Center on Thursday. Thank you very much for attending. I've really enjoyed this chance. I always love watching Ben give these demos. I always learn something new, and looking forward to meeting everybody who attended this and hoping you get a chance to come and evaluate our technology. We'd love to work with you. Thank you, everybody, from IGEL, from Simon, and from Jeff at IGEL. Patricia, back to you.
Thank you. Nothing else on my end. Thank you all for joining.
All right, I will throw up. I have one last slide for everyone, just a quick wrap up slide for you all, and just a mention of some links that I put out in the chat for you. So I put a link to our forum thread for today's presentation. You'll be able to ask more questions if you like, and that's also where we'll post the link to the recording. But you will get a link, a recording link also in tomorrow's email. It'll come directly from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. And also in the chat for you is a link to a very short survey. Just love to get your feedback on our webinars. It always helps us get with your feedback. And finally, just reminder that we will be at Citrix Synergy in just a couple of weeks, and we'll be over in the Community Hub, which is in Synergy Park, so be sure to come find us. We also will have a pregame party on Monday afternoon, so if you get there early enough, we'd love to have you stop by, grab a drink, and talk to other CUGC members. There's a link on the page here. It's for CUGC at Synergy. That's where you'll get all the information about where we'll be, what we'll be doing, and how to find us. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for being on this call today. Thank you, Simon and Jeff and Patricia and Ben. That was great information. And thank you, Sam, for keeping an eye on those questions for us today. I really appreciate that. Like, do we have, nope, just a thank you note in the questions.
Yep.
So thanks again, guys. I hope everybody has a great afternoon, and be on the lookout for links to the recording, and hope to see you all at Synergy.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, everybody. See you at Synergy.
Thanks, everyone.